Welcome today to this is our fourth critical conversation series, and our topic for today's discussion is on religion and the role of religion, in particular in the Abrahamic family, on peace and the situation in the Middle East. And we would say, I think, religion is integral to understanding the dynamics of the Israeli-Palestinian relationship, and even more beyond that, the Jewish, Christian, Muslim relationship. And then, of course, the Abrahamic family includes Druze and Baha'i and any number of sects and denominations and streams. And the truth is, there's a very wide variety of religious practice out there. And ultimately, each of us as human beings, we have a unique and personal relationship with the universe, and whatever we think of as God and intelligence and interconnectedness exists in time and space. That's a very deeply personal thing. And as a Jewish person, I'm interested to hear from Rabbi Hanan today. We're going to go into some texts from the Jewish sources and then have a response from Alex and Ghassan. And we'll have a lively dialogue, and I'll be joined today in the role of a co-facilitator by Walid and Bill. And I'll say a few more words about them. But I wanted to just offer some opening remarks to shed the context, to create the context for today's conversation. So let's see. So as I started this journey of peacemaking, I realized at some point, you know what, you couldn't learn enough history to really be educated enough to be a peacemaker. Because at the end of the day, each of us has our own unique, deep personal history. And I think that ties into the sacredness and the holiness of each life and the power of human connection. And it's 2025. And I think in this day and age, it really behooves us to take a stand. At some point, you have to step outside of understanding the history, and as an individual, be willing to take a stand. And when we come together as teams and groups and take a stand together, then we can really start to move the needle. So for today's conversation, we're going to weave together not just our personal stands, but also the texts from our different traditions, in particular Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And in those faiths, those texts are sometimes used to divide and sometimes to unite. But if we don't talk about some of the more difficult passages, we may spin our wheels when trying to really bring peace to the human family. So we're going to dive into that today. I'm really excited for today's discussion. We've got an excellent cast of characters, and it's just going to be a lively discussion, I think. So just a few notes about the facilitation. The Middle East Peace Civic Forum convened today's conversation to really hold space for a thoughtful conversation where we can first and foremost get related to each other, build a relationship, and learn something from one another, and bring open ears and big hearts, because I think ultimately that's what this whole peace journey is about. It's about leading from the heart, and that's really something that ties in to the divine. Is what is our conception of the divine? So with that, I'd like to introduce our guests, first of all. So I'll start with Rabbi Schlesinger. Rabbi, you are a founding member of Roots Shurashim, which is a Palestinian-Israeli grassroots initiative focused on understanding nonviolence and transformation. You're currently the Director of International Relations, and you're an Orthodox rabbi. I could say quite a bit about your background, but I want to get to our guest as quickly as possible. And then also Ghassan, who, as I mentioned before we started, we go way back and have wonderful ties through our mutual interest in conflict and peace. But you're an ordained sheikh of the Qadiri Sufi Order of Peace in the Holy Land, and the founder of Anwar al-Salam, the Lights of Peace Center in Nazareth. And you're currently the international director of the Abrahamic Reunion, which brings together wonderful spiritual peacemakers in the spirit of creating something really transformative. So I know you as a man of the heart, and I'm so happy that you're with us today. And welcome back to the conversation. So, and then Pastor Charles, Alex, as we've agreed, you are first generation American, international and multicultural entrepreneur, and you've dedicated your life to building bridges among leaders in all different fields, including clergy. Now you have a degree in computer science and a doctorate in divinity, and 2 adult children and a teenage daughter, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
All right, so we've just met for the first time, so I'm pleased to have you in today's conversation, and I look forward to a lively exchange. So, Bill, I want to give you a couple of minutes to make yourself known here. Bill is going to be facilitating quietly from the back while Waleed and I kind of take the lead. But Bill, can you talk a little bit about your expertise?
Yeah, sure. It's very nice to meet all of you gentlemen and lady, if she's still here.
Yes,
I
ladies.
ladies. I have a background in communication of NLP or neuro-linguistic programming. There's a special way that I listen to a conversation when I'm facilitating. That is, I listen off the top of the conversation. What that means is I'm not really taking too much notice of what's being talked about. What I'm looking at is what the person who's speaking looks like, behaves like. So I'm watching the non-verbal behavior. And if I spot things in the non-verbal behavior which isn't indicated in the verbal behavior, then that may be give me an excuse to say, hang on a minute, can I just question that? So long as you accept that, I think we'll be okay. I probably won't say too much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. And that reflects what we're committed to here, which is to hold space for a deep and rich conversation where we get to say things that are sometimes controversial or pointed or filled with emotion, and to make space for that and to make that okay. Because as they say, the only way out is through. So we think it's important to be able to go into some really thoughtful conversations and to hold a safe space for that. And so, Waleed, I'd like to now turn it over to you. Waleed is my fellow board member at the Middle East Peace Civic Forum, and I don't want to label you. You're a good man, a man of heart. I'll let you do the rest of the talking.
Thank you, my colleague and my friend, and thank everyone being here, guests and audience. It means a lot that we are believing in change and that we are believing in creating that common ground for all of us to be part of it and a part of a great thing that we try to do in here. And with that said, I'd like to second and concur with what you said, Matt, that we are here because Hineni Haini Hineni, I am here, and Haina Hineno, we are here, my Lord. So hopefully we can push forward and help others see what we are able to see together. And with that said, the chronological order is with you, Hanan. So please help us understand how can we take the text or the scripture literally or not. So by all means, please.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So the format is that I'm going to take about 20 minutes, during which there'll be a 2 or 3 minute introduction, and then about 17 minutes, I hope, of text study. In the text study, we're going to look at what I call toxic texts of the Jewish tradition, texts that, from my understanding, are fueling this conflict. And together with the difficult text, we'll also look at some possible interpretations that may neutralize the approach that weaponizes them to create conflict today with the Palestinians. So as far as introduction,
Rabbi,
yes.
I would like to add a word about the format for today, so people are clear about the format that will follow. So like you said, we'll give you 20 minutes, and then Waleed will facilitate the transition, and we'll hear 15 minutes each responses from Ghassan and Alex, and then we'll give it back to you. And I will run a timer just out of our commitment to give everyone equal time, since we agreed to that. And not equal time, but balanced time. And that'll be the plan. Thank you.
So the conflict between Israelis and the Palestinians, I believe, is not a religious conflict. On the other hand, it's not merely a political conflict over borders and resources and rights. I say that the conflict is a conflict over identity. Who the Palestinians understand themselves to be and who the Israelis understand themselves to be. And both sides understand it's a zero-sum game. That if my identity is true, yours is false, and if yours is true, mine is false, so you better be wrong, and I will prove that your identity is fabricated. That's the way it usually works. Now, identity, part of identity is about your understanding of your group as a people. Identity is about connection to the land. And in our case, on both sides, Israelis and Palestinians, a central part of identity is religion. So that's what brings religion into the conflict. Now, it should be clear that identity and religion, at least from the Israeli side, were not major parts of this conflict in the past. But as the decades have gone by, identity, and especially religion, have become larger and larger elements of this conflict as Israeli society has become over the decades more traditional and more religious, more wedded to our historical national religious identity. And therefore, I think that front and center in trying to deal with the conflict and solve the conflict are two matters that are related. The first matter is what I call identity reconciliation. That Israeli Jews will come to accept and recognize and respect and even cherish Palestinian identity, see its truth, and vice versa, that Palestinians will come to cherish and accept Israeli Jewish identity. The second matter we have to face is identifying and then dealing with and reinterpreting those texts of the Jewish tradition, of the Jewish religious tradition, that are being weaponized for the past decades, and especially today, to fuel this conflict with the Palestinians. My presentation is going to focus on the second, not on identity in general, not on identity reconciliation, but on these difficult, toxic texts. I'm going to present something very superficial and general because we have, at this point, only 18 minutes left. That's okay. First word of introduction is this. I cannot claim that my peaceful, humanistic interpretation of the Jewish sources is the only correct interpretation. And I cannot claim that the interpretation of those who I would see as warmongers, I cannot claim that their interpretation of Jewish text is wrong. The truth is that they have a leg to stand on. They have legitimate interpretations of the text, and I have legitimate interpretations of the text. So what actually, therefore, are we talking about? The question is, from my perspective, not who is more authentic and who has a better interpretation textually and historically. The question is, which interpretation of the text is more in accord with my understanding of God, with my understanding of what's good for the world and for Judaism, my understanding of what I want to pass on to my children. That's ultimately the question. I can't claim that the other side, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, are wrong, or that they're cherry-picking text, taking them out of context. I can only claim that the Judaism that they are propagating is not my Judaism, and that I have as a legitimate interpretation as they do. Another last word of introduction. I'm focusing on the difficult texts, the toxic texts, and I'm presenting an alternative interpretation. What I'm not dealing with is the good texts, the humanistic texts, the peaceful texts, the texts of reconciliation, the texts of love and brotherhood and common humanity. There's lots of them in Judaism. They're inspiring, they're beautiful, but that's not for this session. This session is for the hard stuff. Okay, so with that introduction, I will now ask Matt to put on the screen the text we want to look at. I'm going to divide them into 5 different categories. In each category, the red texts are the toxic texts, and the blue material are the interpretations that developed in the direction of reconciliation and human understanding. So we're still waiting for the screen share. As we're waiting for the screen share, I'll say the 5 different categories. The first category is Jewish inheritance and ownership of the land of Israel. The second category is hating the enemies of the Jewish people. The third is exiling and exterminating the non-Jewish inhabitants of the land of Israel. The fourth category is exacting murderous vengeance against those who have attacked the Jewish people and exterminating them. And the fifth category is the texts that claim that non-Jews are inherently inferior to Jews. Matt's asking if we can see the screen share, but I think we cannot.
We can, yeah.
You can?
Oh, some people are seeing
We
it. so
can.
it
I
is
can
up.
see it.
Okay, very good. So you see now the first category, Genesis 13?
Yes.
Yes. So what we have here is God's promise of the promised land to Abraham. And that promise is in many places repeated to Abraham and to his son Isaac and to Jacob. It's a mainstay of Jewish scripture. And many Jews, rabbis today and in the past understand this as ownership. The land is ours. It's Jewish land, and no one else belongs here. And those who want to be here have to accept our ownership and our lordship. What do I do with this? What do peacemakers do with this? So I brought a number of texts in blue that you can see right now. I'm not going to read them. I'm going to paraphrase them. The first text from Genesis 15 is another promise to Abraham. And it says that, Abraham, you're not going to inherit the land right now. You will rather go down to Egypt, you and your offspring. You'll be slaves there for generations. And later your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren will come back to land and inherit it. Why only then? I'm reading the last 7 or 8 words of the text. The iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. The Amorites were the local inhabitants. What that means is that the promise to Abraham and his descendants, to the Jewish people, to inherit the land can only be actualized when the present inhabitants have lost their right to be there because of their moral failings. Extremely important. And for me, that means at any point in Jewish history, the Jews will claim that the land is ours and no one else's. We would have to prove something that's impossible, that God has told us that the present inhabitants have lost the right to be there because of moral failings. So that means the whole promise is contingent on God's understanding of the moral situation of the present inhabitants. A very important point. The next text, Leviticus 25, I'll read the whole thing. It's only 1 verse. The land must not be sold beyond reclaim. This is speaking to the Jewish people living there. For the land is mine, says God. You are but strangers resident with me. We Jews always have to remember that together with the divine promise of inheriting the land, we're merely tenants of God. It's never ours. We never own it. We never have balut ownership over it. We're only tenants with God at his mercy, which connects to the previous text we just saw. The third text is from Leviticus. And it comes after a long list of moral failings that the present inhabitants of the land then 3,000 years ago, the Canaanites have failed in. And the Israelites, the Jews, are told don't fail in those same failings. And then it says that the Canaanites are being thrown out of the land because of their moral failings. And when you Israelites inherit the land, you will also be thrown out by God if you follow in the footsteps of those Canaanites and commit the same moral failings. Again, the idea is that the Jews don't have ownership of the land. They're really there as guests of God, depending on their behavior. And like we said earlier, depending on the behavior of other inhabitants that the Jews might think to displace. Let's, the last text from Leviticus 26 on this subject says that the Jews will inherit the land. God will bring them to land, but it's dependent on their moral behavior. And they will, in the future, they will sin. It's a prediction. It's a prophecy of God. They will sin. And when they will sin, they will be thrown out. So we Jews always have to know that our life in the land is contingent, always contingent. That was the first part of the presentation. We're now going to the second element, hating the enemies of the Jewish people. You see here a list of texts in red that talk about the fact that you who love God must hate evil. And I can bring more texts from Proverbs, from the book of Amos, this book of Psalms, that you should hate the enemies of God, you should hate the enemies of the Jewish people. What do I do with that? One text I brought in blue from the Babylonian Talmud, we'll paraphrase it, says, and this is a very well-known idea, the wife of Rabbi Meir, Bruria was her name, taught Rabbi Meir, her husband, the great rabbi, that you don't pray for the demise of the evildoers, you rather pray for the demise of the evil. So the evildoers will no longer be evil. And we learn from this the idea, don't hate the evildoers, hate their hate. I'm sorry, hate their evil. That's a hard distinction to make. But the upshot of it is, when we're able, is that we love human beings. We despise their behavior if it's called for. I brought another text, Ethics of the Fathers, a very well-known text. It says, envy, unbridled passion, and hate of God's creatures drive a person from the world. In other words, our tradition knows very well that it may say in certain places, hate evildoers, but the truth is that if you fill your soul with hate, even of evildoers, it will drive you from this world. It will corrupt you. It'll be albatross upon your neck. It will corrode you from inside. There's another commentator, I didn't bring it, who says that hating evil is like chemotherapy. It's a poison that may be sometimes necessary, but it's very, very dangerous, and you must keep it to the absolute minimum. And it's better, if you can, to do without it completely. And then I brought Midrash Genesis Rabbah. This goes back 1,700 years. Section 49, clause 9, what it says is that hating evil means, and listen to this, this is really clever. Hating evil means being so repulsed by evil that you can't imagine seeing it. So wherever you go and other people see evil, you don't see it. You only see good. You judge everyone favorably. And that's what it means, okay, in this text, to hate evil. Yes, hate evil. Hate it so much so that you can't imagine that it's anywhere. It doesn't exist. It's not here. Everyone has some positive characteristic. Everyone has some mitigating factor that can explain their behavior. Everyone has some good in them. I find this very powerful. That's the second category. Moving now to the third category. Exiling and exterminating the non-Jewish inhabitants of the land of Israel. Verses of this sort are found in Exodus and in Deuteronomy, telling the Israelites in the desert, wandering for 40 years after leaving Egypt, that you will soon inherit the land of Israel under Moses' successor Joshua, and you are commanded to enter the land of Canaan, where the 7 Canaanite nations live, and to fight against them, to exile them, to get rid of them, and if need be, to kill them, men, women, and children. From my perspective, it sounds terrible, absolutely terrible. You find that Deuteronomy 7, I quoted here. You find it also in Deuteronomy 20 and other places that I didn't quote. So very briefly, let's look at the one text I brought in blue, the text of what we would call peace. It says as follows. From Maimonides' Mishnah Torah, we're talking about the 12th century in Spain and Egypt. Moses Maimonides, the greatest Jewish philosopher, thinker, and leader perhaps that we've ever had in the Jewish people. It's a positive commandment that says, to annihilate the 7 nations who dwelled in Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, as Deuteronomy 20 states, you shall utterly destroy them. Anyone who chances upon one of them, one of the people of the 7 Canaanite nations, and does not kill him, violates a negative commandment, as it states in verse 17, do not allow a soul to live. And now the important words, the memory of them has already been obliterated. What that means is there's a command for all time to kill Canaanites, wherever you find them, even in Australia, but they don't exist anymore. They're gone. Jewish tradition sets down there are no more Canaanites. And this commandment of killing the inhabitants of the land, says Maimonides and all other Jewish commentators, only applies to the Canaanites, and they're gone. So that means this is a dead letter. Now, it's true that today, especially since October 7th, many Israelis, Jews, religious Jews, look at the Palestinians, especially Hamas, and see Canaanites. I can't deny that. But from a legal perspective of Jewish jurisprudence, the law of killing the Canaanites is a dead letter and does absolutely not apply. And as far as I know, there are no Jewish legal commentators and deciders of law that disagree with that. The law doesn't apply today. We're going now to the 4th category. Exacting murderous vengeance against those who have attacked the Jewish people and exterminating them. Again, I hope that you see the source on the screen. We have here Numbers 31, we have the book of Psalms, we have Deuteronomy 25. Numbers 31 is not a commandment for today, at least according to the simple meaning of the verse. It's a commandment to Moses when the Israelites were in the desert after leaving Egypt to exact the vengeance of the Israelites against the Midianites. This is after the Israelites were attacked by the Midianites, and it says specifically to attack them back with vengeance, and the verses go on to say to slay all the males and all the females who are of the age of puberty and above. It sounds terrible. It is terrible. What do we do about that? So on a simple level, on a legalistic level, it only applies to the Midianites. I have to admit, though, that since approximately the early 1950s, when Jordanian Fedayim, which we would today call terrorists in Israeli language, were attacking Jewish settlements on the 1948 armistice line, and the Israeli army under Arik Sharon crossed over the line into the West Bank, occupied by Jordan then, and committed what some would define as a tevach, as a massacre, against the Arab-Palestinian residents of the village of Karama. In the wake of that, there was a Jewish commentator and others followed who used this matter of the Midianites to justify what happened. And what Arik Shon and his soldiers did as an act of vengeance that was necessary for deterrence. I can only say that that's a live discussion in Jewish law today, but the simple meaning of the verse is only talking about the Midianites. Then in Deuteronomy 25 here, again in the red, is Amalek, which many of you probably have heard of. The command in the Deuteronomy 25 to blot out the memory of Amalek. That was a people that existed in times who attacked the Jewish people.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, Rabbi. We can give you some additional time.
So what do we say about that? So look at the two sources I brought. One from the Babylonian Talmud says Sancheriv, who was an ancient, I think, Assyrian military and political leader, already came and scrambled all the nations. What that means is that according to Jewish law, today we cannot identify who is a Amalekite. And therefore, from the point of view of Jewish law, it's a dead letter. Again, I have to admit that many people, and they have sources in Jewish law, see the Amalekites as not just a specific people, but as a prototype. Anyone who acts evilly against the Jewish people is Amalek and have to be exterminated. There are those who understand like that. But again, from a purely legalistic point of view, Jewish law says there are no Amalekites today, and this particular law only applies to Amalek. I also brought from the Mishnah Torah. I think time is short. Why don't I skip that and go on to number 5, which is the last category. Non-Jews are inherently inferior to Jews. There are many ancient Jewish sources among the mystics and the Kabbalists that claim, and I brought some of those sources here, that the Jewish soul is spiritually superior to the non-Jewish soul. And although it may be that those texts are talking on some type of spiritual level we don't understand, I cannot deny that these texts have a very, very immoral and corrosive effect on many Jews throughout the generations, including and especially today. I can tell you stories of religious Jews who have told me that Palestinians are cockroaches. And when I talk to this particular young man about the fact that all human beings are created in God's image, he blanched at my heresy. Blanched at my heresy. Yes, there are today, again, many religious Jews who believe that Palestinians are cockroaches, and they believe that they have Jewish sources to support them. What do I say to that? I will end by the two last sentences on my sheet. The first is Genesis chapter 1. And God created humankind in the divine image, creating it in the image of God, creating them male and female. It seems a no-brainer, very clear to me, that the outset of the Torah, of Jewish scripture, we're being told that all human beings are in God's image, all are equal, all are equally valuable as a divine soul. But again, there are other Jews on the basis of these mystical texts that understand differently. And last, I'll conclude that I have used the word mystical again and again, and I am alluding to the disagreement that's been going back at least 2,000 years in Jewish history between the mystics and the rationalists. The mystics, the Kabbalah, the Zohar, are consistently claiming that Jewish souls are superior to non-Jewish souls, and the rationalists, whose texts I cannot bring here because they don't state the point explicitly, you have to gather together many different statements or inferences, the rationalists led by Maimonides, who I mentioned earlier, make it clear in the end that all souls are created equal. And perhaps that's a good place for my presentation to end, with the hope that all Jews and all of us will come to the moral and religious conclusion that indeed all souls are created equal, have an equal right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hanan, for your eloquent explanation and you sharing with us all of these toxic scripture, toxic text, as you described it. And there are many questions, at least from my side, and I'm sure there are others with other different questions as well. However, I'm interested in hearing Alex and Ghassan and their understanding of the different interpretations of what you have shared with us. Because again, as you have stated at the beginning, other people have other interpretations and understanding. So the question will be now, which interpretation to follow and which morality we are supposed to anchor ourselves with. Is it our human morality or the morality presented to us in the letter, in the texture? So Ghassan, Alex, would any of you would be interested in responding to such interpretations? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Rabbi Hanan. It's a great introduction, and I learned a lot from what did you say. And really, it's remind me once when we were together as a group of friends, poets. We were driving next to Kfar Kana in the north. It's close to Nazareth. And we saw some lands, it's taken by the government, and we say, oh, since 48, we are writing poems, and every year we lost more lands. I said to them, come to stop to write poems. Maybe we'll keep the other lands. It's kind of or part of my narrative, to understand that I belong to the people, all of the people in the Holy Land. It's not in Israel, come to say Palestine, but to try to interpret or to do something, you need the objective and the real. We know that all of these texts is real because it's Torah, it's Quran, it's New Testament, but we need to take the historical frame, the real historical frame, because we are in a fake era or a fake time that everything they changed from right to left, left to right. And you can find today the Western people, what they are saying about the East, because one time they try to paint it in a black. But as we say, you can lie to part of the people, part of the time. You cannot lie to all of the people all the time. And it's very important for us to be honest with ourselves. What the meaning of dialogue, Since 48, we are in dialogue, and since 48, the Palestinians lose more and the Israelis lose more, Because if you'll achieve everything, you will lose everything. But if you'll share everything with the others, you will achieve more and more and more. It's an ethical question. It's not a kind of clever entrance or entree, we say, to your interest on interest. As I say, when we build a group, we say, come to change yourself and the other. Don't come to change the other, not yourself. It's very important. And what happened in the Holy Land, Rabbi Hanan, you know that. I raised there. I live there. We know what is going there from both sides. Come to say, I don't want to blame one side and to leave the other side. No. And very important thing about the land, we know. You say that there is a proof that God gave that land to Abraham, right? And I agree, it's given to Abraham, but Isaac and Ishmael, the sons of Abraham. This is first thing. And another thing, it's very important to understand that. I agree with you about what you said to Isaac and to Joseph and others, Jacob and Joseph and so. But the question is, if we have a part of our family, they are not mentioned there, we throw them out? No. We are human being, right? And we will give them part. It doesn't, as once I spoke with some people, Ghassan, you have a big countries, big land all around the Middle East and in the Far East and so on. We have very small country. I say, okay, but also come to say this is Jewish state, right? But there are other people living there. Don't kill them. Make them part of your life. Part of your life. And the second thing that I want to say about that, it's very important to understand myself very well. I need to take my part of my texts. Can I take all of my texts? It's very important to understand what kind of state I need, what God ordered me to do, to initiate state or not, to be on that state. Vaishkomba, what the meaning Vaishkomba? It's very important to go and to check it, to check it there. It's very important, you know. I believe that the Jews and the Muslims must live together. And you know, I'm very, not very old man, but I'm old man, you know, but I raised since 16 years old until today, I'm working to try to bridge the gaps. If there's no possibility, I'll build a bridge. You know, the most important thing is, once a very small story, I want to say that Nasruddin Khoja was searching. It's like, you know, Yuda, okay? He was searching under a lamp, something. The people were praying inside the mosque, and when they got out, they saw him searching. Oh, Nasruddin, what are you doing? He said, I lost my ring. I try to find the ring. They begin to search together, all of them, hundreds of people. In the end, they said, Nasruddin Khoja, there's no ring. Where's your ring? Where did you lost your ring? He said, there. They ask, but why are you searching here? He said, because the light is here. The light is here. It's very important for all of us to try to rethink about all of our basic things in our lives. As sometimes you come to many people and they say to you, Ghassan, we give you you know, answer for this question, and you'll say this is wrong answer. The second answer, the third answer, they will prepare for you 100 wrong answers, because in the 50 you'll say, okay, the 50 is okay. And my father taught me, if there's 1,000 wrong answers, say the 1,000 wrong answers. Don't be silent. Say the truth. I remember what you say, Rabbi Hanan, about the 7th of October. You know, there is a difficult or misunderstanding between when it's began. 7th of October, 67, 48, we don't know. I know many people shocked, and I shocked in the 7th of October about the Israeli people that we lost, the Jewish people that we lost. It's hurt me. 1,300. The Palestinian lost 60,000 children and women. Then we need to understand what is there. The most important thing I want to say, how many time I have more? Because sometimes I forget myself. more 3-4 minutes?
Still have 7 minutes.
Oh, okay, thank you. And I want to say that, listen, God say in the Quran that he will inherit the land to the righteous people. It's not mean that I have the land, I'm the righteous people. No, 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 no. The righteous people, these people can create a horizontal connection after that vertical, because there's no vertical connection with God without the horizontal connection with the people. It's very important to understand ourselves, you know, how to get part of this land. The land is not ours. We are part of the land. In the end, we'll enter there. We are fighting, all of us. This is mine, this is mine. After 70, 100, 120 years, we are leaving. The land will say, come on, I'll hug you. Enter there. Okay, all of my wars in this world, what to do with that? Nothing. The most important thing is to leave after you some great smell, a perfume after you. What the meaning of perfume? A good interpretation of your text. I witnessed that all of the religions, they have a very hard text in their scriptures. But we need to handle with that texts and to create a very great interpretation for the context. Because Torah, how many years, Rabbi Hanan? 3,000? New Testament, 2,000? Quran, 1,400 years. I think it's suit for all of the world until the end of the world. But there are some pieces of them, it's suit to that time. We need to complete our scriptures for the future with a new interpretation, right? Then we can cover all of our mess things. This is what we need to do. It's very important for us, because I say that imagine Israel will win now, will throw all of the people, all of the Palestinians to Jordan or to Egypt, and there's no Palestinians. I will tell you, there will create civil war. Believe me, it will be civil war there. It's not from my opinion. It's from the Jewish resources. Rabbi Hanan knows how to find that. I want to say something. In Islam, the Muslims believe, all of the Muslims all around the world, even if you will invite all of the groups to Europe to enjoy and to see that and say, no, 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 it's yours. No, no, no. The Muslims believe Israel is a Palestinian or is a Muslim land. That's it. It's close. We cannot deal there. It's a Muslim land, and they will fight until the last one, until they will take it back, to be honest. But in our hands as leaders now to work how to change in a peaceful the meaning. Everything you are doing, killing, attacking, occupying, because, you know, there is interpretation belong to the desire. There are some commentaries belong to the political situation. There are some interpretation belong to the selfishness position of the people. We need to avoid all of these things and to go directly to the right place and to create a real interpretation, how to understand one another, how to work one with another. Before we are Muslims, Christians, and Jews, we are human beings. We belong to Abraham. And many people say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not belong to Abraham. So, okay, we can meet at Adam and Eve. You know, we are the same descendant of two people came to this earth to do the best. And look at the verse of the Quran when God say, "Oh people, we created you from male and female, and we have made you nations and tribes to know one another." The will of God, or the will of the creation, is knowing, knowledge, to know. to understand, to do, to build. And from here, I want to say, listen, all of the world tried to demonize Islam. We feel that, and the Muslims feel that. And they speaking, and we are the best, but they are not seeing what is the Muslims preparing. Because hidden things preparing, not preparing power or no. Preparing knowledge and things. And I know that the Muslims solve all of the problems of the science and the knowledge in the world, the math, everything, this computer that we are speaking from, we cannot do it without the Muslims. Logarithm, right? They add the zero to the math and they solve all of the problems of the mathematics and so on. They help us with the astronomy, they help us with the chemistry, they help us with all of these things. Until today, part of the medicine, it's based on their knowledge. I will cancel that. They didn't do anything from the Muslim side. I want to say something. Count the Muslim scholars and physicians and so all around the Western world. Count them only. Don't say anything, okay? I want to say that they are so great nation. We began with different enemy. Russia, our enemy. China, our enemy. Each age we have different enemy. Today they are the Muslims. Tomorrow, I'm not sure who will be the next enemy. We don't need all of these circles taking us away from the truth. And to know what we need to do about the land. I bear witness that God taught the Muslims to be straight and to be righteous and not to persecute Jews or Christians on their places. You know that the group of the Najran, Christian people of Najran, when they came to visit the Prophet Muhammad in Medina, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they entered the mosque and the time of the prayer happened when they were there. And the Prophet, they say, we will get out to pray. He said, no. This is house of God. Come to pray here. And he gave to the Christians place to pray. And he had lots of discussions with the Jews all the time. There were wars? Yes. Yes, between Prophet Muhammad and the Jews. Yeah. But later, when the Jews begin to get out and Omar clean all, or not clean, or got all of the non-Muslims out of Saudi Arabia, he didn't throw them or occupy them or kill their people. He built many synagogues and many churches for the Christians and the Jews in Syria, Palestine, and Jordan at that time. It's very important to keep that. And from here, I want to tell you, before I think my time is so tight, I will not say that the Muslims did a great thing. No. They do lots of bad things. They persecute the Muslims. We need to differentiate between Islam and Muslims. Islam is high level and great theory. The Muslims, they are different. They persecuted, they occupied, they killed, they. But along the history, we saw that the connection between Muslims and Jews, especially Jews, it was a very great connection, and they pushed them ahead. I want to say something, last thing, and I'll pass it to you. I'm writing an article about the influence of Al-Ghazali on Maimonides, Rambam. And, if you look at the names of the book of Maimonides, it's taken, the names of the books, the titles of the books, taking from the material of Al-Ghazali. But Maimonides didn't mention Al-Ghazali at all there. This is one of the questions, why you are not mention Al-Ghazali at the same time you mention Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi, the two philosophers in that rational philosophy of Maimonides. I want to say that They help one another. I cannot say we taught the Jewish or the Jewish taught us. It's come to say both sides influence one another. I think today we can do it if we will be straight, if we will be righteous, if we will clean our hearts to polish the mirror of the heart, then we can come to rebuild the situation and to bridge the gap between both of us. And this is what we are doing. And you know about the last iftar in Nazareth that we did. We had 360 people, 60 leaders, all of Israel, from all of the faiths. They came and we broke the fast and we spoke. And I gave 4 Jews, 3 Christians, 2 Druze, 1 Muslim. And they asked me, why you don't have Muslims to talk? I say, all of the Muslims, they are talking. They are speaking. But the most important thing is, we invite you to the iftar. We need to listen to you. But when you will invite us, try to listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghassan, for your heartfelt contribution. And thank you for addressing the point that we need to work on our internal selves if we want to reconcile with the other. Alex, I know that there have been many points that were raised, but if I want to pinpoint what Hanan said and what Ghassan said, is that we need to hate evil, and that we need to recognize the human, and that can only happen via understanding thyself. So, would you like to proceed with that?
Yes, I will. And thank you so much,
Please.
Hanan. Wonderful dissertation there, Ghassan. Very, very well spoken and well said. One of the things that I think Matt introduced me, and I had the privilege of being a first generation American, and that gave me an interesting perspective. And Hanan, you brought up a thing about identity reconciliation, and Ghassan, you brought up about the house and those types of things. So I want to come from that perspective. So my life has been led from a position of having to live through the lens of what we call perceived bias. So when someone initially looks at me, they see, an African American or whatever they mean, but they don't realize that I have some Latino heritage and some of the others. And so I'm never what would you I'm never failed to be amazed by people's shock when they see me speaking Spanish and doing some other things of that nature. I bring that up for a very simple reason, because in the Christian faith and the folks that I've actually engaged with, and primarily in America, a lot of that those churches and a lot of the congregants there, they don't have anything other than an American perspective, because most of them haven't traveled outside of America to understand it. So the problem that we deal with in that context is that we have a scenario where they're reading a kingdom book with a democratic mindset. And when you look at it from that perspective, there's a lot of challenges that come with that. There's things that and components of a kingdom that are in direct opposition to a democracy. And I spoke to some folks the other day, and I said that I subscribe to a thing called game theory. And what that means in game theory, there has to be opposing sides. So if we go to the book, the Christian book, the Bible, and we go to Genesis 8, there's God's standard operation procedure that I find, and it's Genesis 8:22. He says, as long as the earth exists, there will be seed time and harvest time. So that's the standard of operation. When we get into the other portion of it, it said there will be summer and winter, there'll be night and day, and there'll be cold and heat. So those are opposites that we look at. Hanan, he actually mentioned about hating evil and those types of things. And so we have to go back to the beginning. When we look at law, law comes from a perspective of finding a precedent. And so when we find the precedent, we go all the way back to the beginning of Genesis, when he said that God created the heaven and the earth. And I love where Hanan come in, and he says in Genesis 1:27, he said, okay, let us create male and female. And in 26, he said, let us create man in our own image and likeness, and let them have dominion. Okay. So from that dominion perspective, that means rulership, that means kingship, that means that type of governance that we have. And so when we look at how we progress through scripture, a lot of our folks in the Christian faith we always approach the Bible from the curse perspective, meaning that there was Genesis 3 is when they cursed, they sinned, or they rebelled against God and God's law, and then there was consequences that came according to that. So if we look at it from that context, then we have to go back to the beginning and understand law and order. So when we come from the position, my organization is called the Kingdom Foundation, and when we look at it from that perspective, our vision is to influence the earth with the culture of heaven. So what that means is that we have to cultivate a scenario where we look at things from a collective perspective and go from there. Hanan, you brought up identity reconciliation, and we've been some conversation where we've talked about identity theft. And when I look at identity theft, we come from four different categories of relationship when I look at that identity theft. And those relationships are one being sons, and that's gender neutral, meaning offspring. Then we have slave, which would mean non-human. Then we have bastards, which are fatherless, and then we have citizens. And then from a citizen perspective, that's where our rights and privileges are held. So if we look at it from those relationships, that identity theft, and we go back to Genesis 1 and 2, which is where God wanted us to actually live, we actually declared a scenario or a declaration of independence against God and his spirit and intent, meaning that he had two trees in the middle of the garden, and he said, the tree of life you can eat from all day, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, if you eat of that, you shall surely die. So that's where death came into play. So when we get into the house that Ghassan had brought together, we go to one of the prominent kings in scripture in Proverbs. Proverbs 24, he said, with wisdom, a house is built. Through understanding, it's established. And through information, its rooms are filled with riches and treasures. So if we come from that perspective, we have to categorize and look at the three differences. We have wisdom, we have understanding, and we have knowledge. So knowledge we look at as information. Understanding, we look at comprehension of the information that we have. And then when we go to wisdom, it's the practical application of the things that we brought it together. I bring that to the forefront because if we have corrupt information, we're going to have corrupt comprehension. And if we have corrupt comprehension, we're going to have corrupt application. So now when we look at the whole aspect of the earth, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and he gave us dominion to rule the earth. So a lot of times we look at it from the perspective of the 8,000 or 8 billion, I apologize, inhabitants of the earth, but we have to go back to the beginning, right? And Jesus says in John chapter 1, in the beginning was a word, the word was with God, and the word was with God, and he became flesh and dwelt among men. Now, if we break down the topic of a word is an expressed thought. And when we talk about an expressed thought, this is where we bring up the codified authoritative sources that we all from each religion look at. We have the Bible, we have the Quran, and then we have the Torah. So if we look at that codification, that all comes from the inspiration of what God's intent was. So when we go from that perspective, we have to come from the Father God. And what I mean by that is in John chapter 5, he talks about the Son being Jesus. And he says the Son can do nothing of himself. He can only do what his Father does. And his Father shares with him everything that he wants him to do, and because he loves the Son. Now, the conflicts that we have and the resolution that we look to bring, it starts with the Father. Father in the Hebrew means source, if you can respect that. So if we go back to the source and we have that scenario, we're looking at the covenant that actually was established with the Abrahamic covenant. Now, there is time, as Ghassan had mentioned, there's time before Abraham, but he instructed Abraham to come to a place to leave his father's house. And the reason that he wanted to leave his father's house is because God is considered a jealous God, and the people got into the practice of worshiping other gods outside of the true and living God. So he said, okay, I want you to leave, and then we're going to designate you as that person to actually have many nations. I think it starts in Genesis chapter 12. He says, I will make you a ruler of many nations, and so forth and so on, and they will be blessed. All of the families of the earth will be blessed. So when we look at it from that perspective, it was because of the rebellion or the sin with the original law that God created. And so when we go back to that and we understand that the law that was created, we go all the way back to Genesis when Adam and Eve rebelled against God and made a declaration of independence. So if we look at it from that perspective, we have all of these different things. And then after they did that, they were kicked out of God's presence. Eden meaning the presence of God or the moment or the place of God. So they were moved out of God's presence and they had a spiritual being, which was that angel that guarded the Garden of Eden to protect them from eating from the tree of life. So he wouldn't be in the rebellious state that Lucifer, the angel that was kicked out of heaven, was. So when we look at that, God wanted to maintain a certain sense of normalcy based on what his spirit and intent was and his big idea was in terms of inhabiting the earth. Now, when we go through that, we have this scenario in the first family. There's murder because of jealousy that came in, right? There's two things that dominion that they had. You had Cain and Abel, and they had different jobs, if you will, professions. And the one was jealous of the other because God was pleased with the one because he was in right standing or righteous behavior with the laws that God had given. And so murder crept in, and then they killed the brother based on jealousy. So we progress through the other topics of scripture, and we get to that place where it became so bad that God said, "Hey, I'm going to start this thing all over." And then we hear of the guy Noah, who spent 120 years building this thing, the ark that nobody knew was, and they thought he was crazy. They said, "Hey, this is, we've never seen rain before. We've never done this." So here comes Noah building this thing, and God told him to bring 8 people so we can start all over again. The interesting thing about that dynamic is when they did that, the flood came. God promised, he said, "Okay, we're going to wipe it over. We're going to start from a clean slate." Now, Noah had 3 sons, Japheth, Seth, and Ham. Now, in Noah's place, he said, "Okay, I'm giving you the creativity to inhabit and cultivate the earth." And he created this vineyard, and he became intoxicated by the very thing that he created, right? So that's where we end up mismanaging the rulership and the dominion that God gives us. Whatever we fail to manage, we lose. So the thing that he created, he got drunk with it. He overindulged. He got drunk, and his son actually exposed his nakedness. And the son that exposed his nakedness was Ham. Now, the interesting thing about Ham is that Ham had a son named Canaan. Noah went in and said, "Hey, you know what? We're going to go in and we're going to go put a curse on Canaan, and then Canaan will be cursed." And I heard Hanan said that the Canaan folks is no longer in existence. But I pulled up a little piece there, and I'm going to take a little moment to read it. It says that the modern Lebanese individuals, particularly those in Sidon, have a strong genetic link to the ancient Canaanites, with over 90% of their ancestry tracing back to this population, according to a study published in the American Journal of Human Genetics. Additionally, genetic studies suggest that modern Jewish and Arab groups in the Levant, including Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and Syria, also share a significant portion of their ancestry with the Canaanites. So when we look at that, we have a family that's feuding against each other over something that God has called us to do. Now, and I think I have 3 minutes left, and I'm going to finish with one of the guys that's considered in the Christian faith as the modern apostle or a major apostle, being the Apostle Paul. Now, Paul came from an interesting dynamic. He came from a family, a wealthy family, where his father actually was able to purchase his Roman citizenship. And in so doing, Paul was able, or Saul as he was called, was able to go to a lot of the prominent schools of his day, and he was very well learned. And so in that whole thing, he's learned in the book of law, the Torah, and so forth, and he had an interpretation of what that was. And what he did was he went through that process, killing those that were Jesus followers, the followers of Jesus. And in so doing, he thought he was doing something that was in line or in right alignment with God's will. And so he ended up killing all of these folks. And Paul had a supernatural encounter with an angel, or with Jesus, he said, and he said, "Hey, Paul, why dost thou persecute me?" And he knew not what happened, so he's blinded. I mean, we can understand that story. I'll save it, for another time. But then he ended up being the writer of 2/3 of the New Testament of the Bible. Now, the interesting thing about that, Acts was the establishment of the first church in the Christian faith. And so when you look at that perspective, you have a scenario where he was at the group of Areopagus, and he spoke to them. He said to them, he says, "You guys, you're ignorant of the very thing that you worship." And he said that you're very religious, that you're very religious. And so when you look at that, you have a scenario and the concept in the Hebrew language of light and darkness. Light means knowledge in the Hebrew race, and then darkness means ignorance. So when you're ignorant of the very thing that we worship, then we have a problem with the deity that we serve. So when we look at it from that perspective, he comes in Acts chapter 17, verse 26, and this is where the reconciliation piece comes. He says, I'll start with 24. "The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything." Now, here's the emphasis that I want to put on this next scripture. He says, "And he made from one man, every nation." And nation from the Greek perspective means ethnos, and it's the word that we get ethnicity, our modern day word we get ethnicity. So he said, "And he made from one man every, if I could use ethnicity of mankind, to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and boundaries of their dwelling place." And I will end there. I've heard the Grammy music.
Okay, so and thank you for that, Alex and Ghassan and Hanan. I saw you have to wrap up in a few minutes, so I want to give the floor to you to respond to what Ghassan and Alex have said, and then we can take it from there.
I think that in 2 minutes, there's no proper response. I would prefer to leave it for the next session.
Sure. Well, if there's anything
Then,
you'd like to say now, please be my guest.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, very good. Well, thank you so much for that. And indeed, we'll continue at our next session. But once you go, we can certainly continue. Waleed, back to you.
yes, unfortunately, you have to depart as Hanan. But I couldn't help but notice that although the three of you good gentlemen were speaking in different vernaculars, but still, to me, I listened and I heard the same thing. The three of you were literally telling me the same thing, which is the need to focus on the moralities, the need to focus on proper comprehension of the text and why it's there and its purpose. And if I may add, something that I allowed myself to explore, and luckily in the 21st century we can do that with a click, is that, for example, the issue, or not the issue, the point of Yetzar Hara and Yetzar Hatov, and the point of the biggest jihad and the smaller jihad, and the point of turning the other cheek, I see them as the same thing, because I see us as the salt of the earth. I see us as the chosen people, and I see us as the people, as the best people that was brought to the nations or humanity. And if I understood correctly, the messaging coming from your side, good gentlemen, is that we need to focus on the moral compass, regardless if it's contradicting the text itself. Because at the end of the day, we need to understand that times have changed and that we need to complete each other, because the sons of Abraham are completing each other's footsteps. Because again, we are the salt of the earth, we are the chosen people, and we are the best people that has been brought to the nations. So how can we lead others to understand such a perspective or interpretation like the three of you have eloquently shared with us. If anyone would like to respond, I'm sure we'd love to hear. Thank you.
I just want to apologize for having to go.
Thank you.
I would like to say something. Listen, first of all, really, I appreciate Walid what did you say, and come to say, Reverend Alex and Rabbi Hanan, they said a very important and very deep things. I think it's important to show or to broadcast to all of the people all around the world to see and to hear and to feel and to touch what we say. I want to say, listen, how to get to the people, how to teach the people. It's a question that I asked my sheikh from Suwani, from Jerusalem. He was the grand sheikh of the Sufi order, or the Qadri Sufi order, and he said to me, Ghassan, if you want to influence the people, open the gates of your heart. Open the gates of your heart and believe in yourself. It's very important. Don't say the things beyond your unit as a human being. It's very important to get it through the tunnel of your storage of the knowledge that you got. What Rabbi Alex say about the knowledge, about to know. And this is the steps of our peacemaking, our work in the Holy Land with the groups from multi-faiths, knowing, understanding, connecting, changing, this is, but you need to know, first of all, the knowledge. And once I came from Nazareth to Jerusalem, I think Matt know this story. To Jerusalem, I was about 17 years old, and before Jericho, we came through the way of Jericho. There were a checkpoint, and they stopped us 15 minutes, 30 minutes. It was very hot. Imagine the lowest point in the world and very hot. I'm in Florida. It's not like there. I was there 45 minutes, and in the 60 minutes, I shout. I said to the soldier, what happened? Why are you stopping us here? He said, wait. I said, no. I began to shout, and the commander heard me, and he came. Who say, who are you? I'm Arab from Nazareth. I say, oh, he said to me, oh, Ashkenaz Arab. I say, yes, Ashkenaz Arab. What you need from me? And I got out. Listen, we are Israelis. We have Israeli ID. He stopped us about an hour. For what? He said, to where are you going? I said, to Jerusalem, to my sheikh. I will go to meet him. And the commander said to the soldier, allow them to go. I went, I was, we are sweating and very tired. I arrived to the sheikh. The sheikh looked at their faces, nothing happened. And he looked at my face and say, are you angry? I say, no. He said, don't lie. I say, yes. Yes, sheikh. What happened? I say, 1, 2, 3. It's happened with us in Jericho. He said, go make ablution. I went to made ablution, and I came back, and he said to me, come to pray. And he was the imam. And he say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Muslimin. The name of God, the God of all of the Muslims. It's not true. The God of all of the people, not all of the Muslims. And we say, ahem. And he repeated again. Third time, he say, oh, thank God, the God of all of the people all around the world. When we finished, he turned to us and he say, did I make mistake? No one answered. He said, look at me. Did I make mistake? I say, no, I don't know. But he say to me, be brave and say yes. He said, what did I say? I say, you said Rabbil Muslimin, the God of the Muslims. He say, and what is the truth? I say, the God of all of the people. I say, tell it to yourself. Ghassan. I say, yes. He say, you missed a great opportunity. I say, what is that opportunity? He said, that soldier, he's doing his work. You could create a new friend to you. During the hour, talk to him. I began to be quiet. And I promised him, I say, listen, I promise you. Next time, when any checkpoint will stop us, I'll create friends. Since I was 17 years old until today, no one stopped me. I lost friends. Open the gates of your heart. You will influence the people. Thank you.
This is wonderful. Great to hear this. And indeed, with opening our hearts, we can not only converse, but importantly, listen, because that's when our soul can actually receive it. It's like, if I understood you correctly, we need to forgive the other for not knowing better. And we need to help them know that better by becoming that better that we aspire them to be. So because we cannot keep on pointing our fingers, waiting for others to do what we expect them to do. We need to do it ourselves and be the role models, if I understood you correctly. Alex, forgive me for not knowing better, and please,
Oh,
by
no,
all
no.
means.
So my position is such that, and I always try to come from a position of scripture. And it says that the thief comes to steal, to kill, and destroy. And so when you look at the thief to me is considered an enemy. And the enemy's modus operandi is to divide and conquer. So as Ghassan had mentioned there, when we look at that, we're taught or we're conditioned or programmed, if you will, to celebrate our commonality as opposed to celebrating our differences. So, for example, if Bill does not look like me and I don't look like Bill, then we're taught to or separate ourselves and not find commonality or common ground and celebrate each other's background and ethnicity and have a positive perspective. So when we look at it from that position, divide and conquer is a modus operandi. Now, when we go back to the position of ignorance, the people, we always get in our own way and we bring together these laws that end up bringing about unrealistic expectations. And so when I look at natural law, for example, the law of gravity, we never vote or have a referendum for gravity. We never do that. And if I go on a 10-story building and I decide to jump off that building without a parachute, then the judgment is inherent in that law. However, if I'm have some knowledge and I understand other laws that I can implement, like the law of aerodynamics, then that law of aerodynamics basically gives me the ability to actually take flight and actually supersede the law of gravity. So when we look at all of these different things and we look at in context of the Middle East and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, one of the things that we're doing is that we look at separating one from even from the license plate. One is green and one is yellow, and it's determined how we do this and how we do that. And then we all have to traverse the same land. And the problem is if we mismanage those situations, then we lose our position and our ability to find reconciliation and peace. So I think that's where we have to find ourselves to be able to come to a place where we're here as stewards of this earth, stewards of this land, and then we can go in and be able to bring about a positive outcome and a desired outcome based on unification as opposed to separation. And then I think we'll have a more, what would you say, reflective image of what heaven is to look like on earth.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Now, after what has been said up until this point, I just realized that because the enemy is one and we're fighting the same enemy, does this mean since the enemy is one? Would you agree with me with such a statement?
Yeah, and if I may, Ghassan, if you don't mind, and I go back to the precedent. So we were created in God's image and likeness, and the enemy being the Lucifer or the Prince of Darkness. Because I think he has to go. Okay,
Ghassan, you have
Ghassan,
to
have a great
go.
one.
Yes. So good. So let's hear from Alex, and then we can have some concluding remarks, and we'll complete.
Thank you.
Thank you,
A
Ghassan.
pleasure to be with you.
Alhamdulillah.
My Alex and all of you. Bye.
Yes, sir. And I'll finish this point, make it very quickly. the issue is the understanding and the our identity. So we were created in God's image, and the enemy came in, and all he did was he cast doubt and actually asked us, did God really say? So that's the question that we actually travel amongst our circles and our spheres of influence. Did God really say? And then the truth is going to be the thing, or the absolute truth is what really determines how we actually cooperate with each other.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Matt.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Well, good. So this has been a really interesting discussion. Alex, I appreciate everything that you shared. You talked about being created in the divine image. I think that's something that we heard from all three of our speakers today. And just the sanctity of human life and the power of human connection, and really the universal spiritual truth that connection is what transcends everything. I think a religion is like a series of guideposts that are pointing us in a particular direction, and that direction is something that's universal to all of us and unique to all of us as individuals. So we're going to get into this more in session 2. That's May 22nd. We're going to come back and have our next conversation. So spread the word, and we'll get more into some of these questions. Just a few words about the Middle East Peace Civic Forum. We've launched a new website, mepcf.org. So please check that out. And we want to keep in touch with you and involve all of our guests in our upcoming programs and have a community. So please sign up for our social media. Drop us a note somewhere, subscribe on YouTube. You can go to our website and sign up for the newsletter there and stay abreast of all the updates. And yeah, we want to grow this community and grow the community of decent, good-hearted people that are saying, whatever it takes, peace is going to happen. So that's the stand that we get to take, and keep breaking through some challenging ground and finding possibility. So with that, oh, your hand is raised, Alex. Yes.
I saw Bill looking so intently or listening so intently, so I'm anxious
Should
to
we hear
hear.
from Bill?
Well, I'm anxious to hear how my neurolinguistic
Sure.
behavior fared in the context of my speaking.
Well, I'm very impressed with the fact that, as the others have said, you all seem to be saying the same thing, and I thought the Imam who spoke to Ghassan was very wise when he said, "Look, basically, it was a human being. You thought he was an Israeli, and you thought you were, but in fact, he was a human being. If you just talked to him, it would have all gone away." And it's about noticing what's the same with us instead of what's different. And I think it's what I've always said. It's the people that are going to solve this, not the history, not what's happened. It's the people. It's people saying, "Come on, look, let's forget all that stuff and concentrate on how we're going to live together." And I think you'll make that point beautifully. So, very well done.
Thank you, Bill.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Alex, for asking Bill that question. I'm glad we heard that. Is there anything else you'd like to offer, Bill, at this point?
No, I think to continue the discussion, and I'm surprised and pleased that it went the way it did, because you were all saying the same thing, which is that there's all these scriptures. The thing about scriptures, they're a guide, but they need to be updated. They were written at a time when people thought about killing one another and doing all that stuff. That's no longer relevant. But it's being held relevant by the people who are still killing one another and doing all that, because they haven't realised they've got to update the ideas. And I think, that's one of the things that you all said. These ideas need to be updated.
Yes. Anything else you'd like to say, Walid, before we complete?
I am happy and honored to be to take part in such a productive conversation between the three siblings. not only honored and privileged as well. And hopefully, we can make our such a rational voice, a reasonable one, be heard more by making it louder, so that we can end the bloodshed, so that we can live in peace, live the true message of our religions that have been shared with us. Thank you.